Here we go. Oh, Julia Mellett is joining me today. Okay, so hey, Danny White here with the Mental Fitness Mastermind podcast, where athletes help athletes defeat mental health challenges in the game of life. Okay, so if you're an athlete, you have a position on our team. If you're a coach or perhaps an athletic trainer, you have a position on our team. If you're a mental health professional, a sports psychologist, or even an athlete transition coach, we have a position for you on our team, because we all know that winning teams are made up of individuals with special skills and special talents, but they come together as one unit, chasing one goal to defeat the challenge in front of them. Okay, so we all know that mental health is a big deal right now. It's been a big deal for a long time, and especially as athletes, it's really kicking us right now. It's hitting us in the mouth, but we're going to rise to that challenge. We're going to come together. The whole purpose of the Mental Fitness Mastermind is to bring a collection of thought leaders together, a collection of athletes together, come up with a solution to stick together, to help each other. When one gets knocked down, the other one will pick us up. If we get knocked down, the other guys will pick us up. We're going to get a team going. We're going to get a collective consciousness to going. We're going to support each other. We're just getting this thing kicked off. We're just getting started. We're going to make some mistakes, but that's part of the whole thing, isn't it? For us to sit on the sideline and wait until everything's perfect before we jump in the game, it's too late. You know, our coach always used to tell us, if we wait until the day of the game to start practicing, then we might as well not even take the field. We'll get our asses kicked. So this is what this whole thing is all about. We're going to come together. We're going to share thoughts. We're going to share ideas. We're going to share stories, and we're going to share each other's support and help each other carry the burden. All right. So now it's time to meet one of your teammates and have some fun. Julia Mellett. 2019 graduate of West Virginia University with a dual bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism and sports and exercise psychology. By the way, I have a degree in mass communications and public relations. So a lot of journalism there. So we got some overlap. That's going to be cool. You're a lot more talented at it than I am. Okay. She now hosts a podcast, a sports psychology podcast called Closer Mentality. And I love this podcast. I started listening to it about a week ago, and I'm kind of addicted to it. I've actually listened to some of the episodes more than once. It's just, you know what, when you go into bed at night and you put something on your head, it's just the storytelling. It's just like having a story. Someone tell a story to you. It's fantastic. I love it, Julia. Good job on that. Okay, so it tells stories of elite athletes, coaches, and sports psychologists, and the relationship to the mental game. Her prior work experience, and this is fun. I've seen some other stuff on your LinkedIn that's not on here, and we're going to have some fun with that, is the WVU Athletics-Video department, ESPN, MLB Network, the Pittsburgh Pirates organization, the NCAA, and AT&T SportsNet Pittsburgh. So she's one of those young professionals that's on a meteoric rise. And so I'm glad to have her here today on the Mental Fitness Mastermind. All right, Julia, thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for teaching me how to say your last name. It was so simple. Okay, so here's the questions. Okay, all right, I want to run down for you and just kind of give you the game plan basically. Okay, so we want to know who you are, so we're going to ask who you are, and then let us know who you are, and then what's the toughest mental fitness challenge you've ever faced as an athlete? Because obviously, as an athlete and a human being, I mean, there's some bleed over there, so we want to hear about that. We want to hear some real stories. How do you defeat that challenge? How did you defeat that challenge? And what are you doing every day to kind of keep up? Because we know it's kind of like golf. Like I always say, everything is as soon as you hit a good shot, you got another one to hit. So we're fighting a battle against an opponent that never stays down. We may knock it out for a while, but he's getting back up. And that's that mental health issue, so we're fighting that opponent. So what advice can you give other athletes that are battling similar issues? And what's your daily mental fitness routine look like? What do you do? What keeps you motivated? What books are you reading? Who are you following? That type of thing. And then we're going to ask you to draft someone in your circle that you would like to see as part of the Mental Fitness Mastermind. And then the seventh question, that's going to be for me to ask you later. So, okay, you got the floor, Julia. Tell us who you are.
Okay, so I am a 2019 graduate of West Virginia University. I have 2 bachelor's degrees in broadcast journalism and sports psychology. And when I was in college, everyone was like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Because those are very different majors, like one is very creative and one is very analytical. And so a lot of to news stations and getting their first jobs in the middle of nowhere, and they were getting paid next to nothing to do something that they wanted to do, but not at the level that they expected to be doing it at immediately.
Right.
And then my sports psych friends were going to graduate school and getting their masters and then their PhDs and getting certified to work with athletes. And here I am with kind of a crossroads position. Okay, do I want to pursue the journalism or do I want to pursue the sports psych? And you can't really do both at this. And so I was just thinking, okay, well, I want to storytell. I want to take people's stories and create from that.
You're talented at that, by the way.
My skill set. What did you say?
So you're so talented at that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I couldn't help it. I mean, you're storytelling. It's the people that listen to your podcast are going to be so impressed. Just go ahead. I'm sorry. Sometimes I need to be quiet.
No, you're good. Yeah. And I mean, that was the thing. Like I wanted to do this thing, this entity, because I knew that this was something that I felt passionately about. And it was also an area of sports like as a whole that doesn't really get talked about. It's kind of taboo, and that's changed over the past like 10 to 15 years, but
yeah,
it's still not where it needs to be. I mean, you have so many athletes on the daily. I mean, we have athletes on the US Olympic team that have said, I can't go to Tokyo because I'm having mental health issues.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still crazy prevalent.
Right.
And I think that it needs to be talked about more than it already is.
I agree.
And if I can create that platform for athletes, I mean, that's the dream, to just be the go-to person to talk about mental health in athletes. Because I think that although there are a lot of podcasts and blogs, and I mean, there are reputable news sources like the Players Tribune who regularly put out mental health related content.
Love those guys.
There isn't anywhere that is specific to mental health in a documentary style, because I thought that the narrative nature of my podcast would go really well with the mental game. And I mean, I think it has.
It's awesome.
I'm excited to just keep continuing content.
It's fantastic. I love I haven't heard anything like it. I mean, it's almost like the wonderful thing I love about it is, because, people read the book and then they watch the movie and they say, the book was better, right? Because nothing that Hollywood can do is as talented as Hollywood is. It can't really match our imagination. And if you have a good storyteller, which you are, that can paint a picture, then our imagination will create the perfect scenes in our minds. And what I love about your podcast, Closer Mentality, is you do such a good job of painting the picture. And the way that you do it, you talk about it and you lead the story in, and then you edit it perfectly to where the guest is talking about that. So it's not like your traditional, I'm asking you a question like what we're doing, and then you give me the answer. You just bleed it right into the narrative, and it's so creative. It's really good, and it's engaging. So, yep, you're doing good on that one. So talk about you.
I mean, when I was trying to figure out how to put the podcast together, I was thinking, I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I just thought that with a topic as sensitive and that relates to an athlete's vulnerability so much, lackadaisical with the way that I was putting it together. I mean, there are podcasts that are just stream of consciousness. And that was just not the way that I saw this podcast coming together.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be more structured.
Yeah.
And I also, at the same time, didn't want the athlete to feel like I was telling their story for them.
Wonderful.
So I had to figure out a way to implement their sound, but also my storytelling. And there's no way that I could have done that with just a stream of consciousness question and answer type podcast.
It's fantastic. It's so unique. And so you think you got that from your journalist background? You think you got that from just the fact that you like to read a lot of stories? I'm not saying that you like to read the book Hunger Games, or I'm not saying that you like the movie Grease or some of those old movies. I'm not saying that you like Yeah, we stalked your Facebook page trying to figure out who is this person, So I was like, yeah, she's a storyteller. So do you think that it's because your journalistic background, or you just like the story? You like to tell the stories. You like all of that. What do you think? So
I mean, storytelling in itself,
right,
because you really have to dig for an athlete to just be completely vulnerable with you.
yeah,
You have to
yeah,
create comfort with
yep,
whoever you're interviewing,
yep, I agree.
whoever you're talking to. And it's the same way with journalism. I mean, no one is going to give you an interview if they don't trust that you're going to use it and not abuse the time that they've given you and the words and the sentiments that they've given you. So that in that way, the two have very closely tied together
Right.
because on paper, it's kind of the same skill set in both scenarios. And that's why I think that it works so well.
It works great. And because you're right, as athletes, we're taught to be mentally tough. I remember, it's a funny story. I remember laying in, when I coming out of high school, the best player on my team, thinking I was somebody. And then I go to college, walk on a junior college. I couldn't have been that great if I'm walking on a junior college, but there's still 130 players. And the coach would always say, we're all scared, we're feeling sorry for ourselves. I realize that I'm maybe the worst person on the team, and there's 130 people. We're trying to get down to 90. We're all laying in the grass and feeling sorry for ourselves at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the coach says, "Hey boys, look around. There's some midnight crusaders on each side of you." And we're like, "What the hell is a midnight crusader?" He said, "I'll tell you what a midnight crusader is. That's one of those guys that doesn't have the guts to quit in front of you. So he's going to get out at midnight when you're sleeping, and he's going to push his car down to the road and jump in it and take off and go back home." That's a midnight crusader. It's because athletes were taught to be mentally tough, and we don't want to admit that when we're broke, when we can't handle it, So when athletes are coming out and trying to explain, hey, I'm a little bit more vulnerable mentally than I show, your podcast and your method allows them to tell their story, and then you just blend it in so perfectly in a narrative that people can go, okay, I understand it. And it's entertaining. That's one of the things that podcasts have to be. At some point, they've got to be somewhat entertaining, correct?
Yeah, I mean, when I was trying to figure out how long there are hour marks that documentaries hit, and there are also shorter form content that
Yeah.
are only like a couple questions like this is. I mean, this is 6 questions and we've already been talking for 16 minutes, you know? So like
That's funny.
time just kind of gets away from you. And I thought that this podcast shouldn't go above about 45 minutes
Right.
because you reach a point in content, especially audio content where there's no visual perception.
Yeah.
You reach a point where your audience gets bored of listening or they've done whatever task they're doing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I
So
get
then as
bored
you're
of
like
listening to
heading
myself.
out for a drive, you have to come home at some point.
Yeah, that's so true. That's a good point. You're smart. Okay,
And so I
so
think that there's a limit. There's a limit to the time allotment that I think this podcast should be, and I think it's about 45 minutes to 50.
whatever you're doing, you got the model, you cracked the code, keep doing it. I love it. Okay, so now you're an athlete, a soccer player. What was your sport?
Yeah, I played soccer and tennis.
Okay, tennis. I'm starting to get into tennis, and let me tell you something. That looks easy. It's just like golf. You know what I mean? It looks easy. The good people make it look easy, but tennis, I'm starting to get into it. I love it, but I'm terrible at it. So, what's the toughest mental health challenge you've ever faced as an athlete? Like a true mental health challenge that you faced as an athlete?
Um, well, one that has really defined my entire life, actually. So on my podcast, I talk a lot about injuries and not necessarily
Mm,
career-ending injuries, but
right.
injuries nonetheless that this was one of them for me. So my senior year of high school, I was being recruited to play soccer and tennis in college. And I was
Nice.
so excited because I was also playing travel soccer and all of my teammates were going to like Division 1 and Division 2 schools. And so I was really excited to like get the ball rolling on recruitment to college. And then I was a goalkeeper,
Oh,
and I
ooh.
was kicked in the clavicle, and I broke my clavicle on my dominant arm.
Mm,
So not only was contact sport kind of swing, and my serve was also shot. So,
yeah.
I mean, it single-handedly derailed the entire collegiate recruiting process for both
Mm,
sports. I
sorry.
mean, I could have come back, I guess, and been like a forward or a midi, or a defender, but it just didn't really work for the way that I had been playing.
A goalie has
And
to, oh,
it was
sorry.
in that moment. No, what were you saying?
I said a goalie has to be one of the hardest positions in the world to play because you're going against everything that your human mind says do. You know, when we see something coming at us at a human, the first thing that we're going to do is duck, whether it's a punch, whatever it is, a rock. But as a goalie, you got to condition your mind to be reversed. When something comes, you got to get in the front of it. So that alone is I can't even imagine, but wow.
Yeah, it was so funny because when I was little, I played 2 seasons of softball, like really early level
Right.
softball, and I was terrified of the ball. I was terrified of the ball. They used to put me out in center field because I was super fast, and I could cover the entire outfield, but
Right.
I was terrified of the ball. So, like, I would just stick my hand out, like, I'm
Uh,
here, but I don't wanna get hit. And, like, my parents love that story because then I turned into a goalie and people are actively shooting balls at me, and
Ah,
I'm in charge of not letting them go in.
that's
And
crazy.
so, it's just funny, like, I was injured so much, I broke so many bones over the
Mm,
course of high school and travel, but,
right.
I mean, it hurt so badly when I couldn't do anything. And
So
so, I had to watch all of my teammates get recruited or
yeah.
just go and continue to play. Like, I obviously got replaced for the rest of the high school season, and that was rough because then I just had to watch everyone under me get promoted,
Mm.
and I couldn't do anything about it.
So you feel like your
And
biggest
so,
I'm sorry, there's a little lag,
I
but
just
that's
feel like
okay.
that was
Yeah.
but I just feel like that was I mean, it completely redirected my entire life because I would have gone to a totally different school. I probably wouldn't have been majoring in journalism, and I for
Right.
sure would not have been majoring in sports psychology because WVU has one of the only sports psychology bachelor's degrees in the country,
Oh, wow.
and I just kind of stumbled upon it.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, I mean, every time it gets cold, my shoulder tenses up. Like that's just something that actively reminds me every winter that this happened.
Mm. Wow, kind
It's
of like
just very interesting to that that one point in my life dictated how the rest of my life is going to go
yeah.
because what would I be doing? What
Right.
would I be doing?
Right.
And
Well,
I'm
yeah.
not I'm not one that dwells on the what ifs, but that is a
Good.
huge what if in my life.
It is. It's absolute. So you would say maybe isolation, then, the feeling of isolation, almost abandonment. When I say abandonment, it's not like another human abandoned you, but, kind of like your aspirations kind of left you because, you weren't able to go and get recruited and join your friends. So a little bit of abandonment from that in isolation. So that's kind of where you felt like your biggest challenge came from mentally and your mental fitness challenge came from. Is that right? Kind of isolation, the feeling of a little bit
Yeah,
of
I mean,
yeah, almost PTSD that you have with it, with the shoulder issue when it gets cold and that type of thing.
yeah, I mean, and I feel keepers get your position with the starters that you played with is just brutal,
I hate it.
especially in high school. Especially in high school because everything is monumental. You
Yeah,
know,
it
like
is.
every little thing in high school is monumental.
It
But
is.
I think that sports is such a platform where you feel like you're so safe normally. I mean,
Yeah,
people access sport as a way to escape.
right,
And so when that's taken from you, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life?
right.
And in that moment, the answer was, I have no idea. I actively
Absolutely.
have no clue what I'm doing with the rest of my life.
You're so
And that was really rough.
you're spot on. And you know what? I was thinking about what sports done, definitely in my life. What is at the high level or at a major level at sports, it keeps us in the moment. It keeps us in the present, doesn't it? Because if you're not in the present moment, focused on what you're doing at the moment, then you're not really going to excel or be at a high level in sports. And so when you get away from sports, your mind wanders. You tend to go from what if, what could be, you know what I mean? All of these things, the scared of the future, because your mind's wandering. And without sports, not just the physical exertion and the camaraderie and the teammate and the community and the tribalness, but you stay in the moment. And so when you don't have sports, the one thing that kept you in the present moments where peace really resides is gone. So now what? You got to retrain your mind, and that's a big challenge. Okay. So how do you, how are you defeating that challenge? I mean, obviously it looks like you're throwing yourself in your work. You're doing a great job of taking, what you've learned in sports and then what you've learned academically, and you're kind of melding them together to create this original masterpiece, which I love. So how are you defeating that challenge daily?
Yeah, I mean, I think in order to answer that question, we do have to go back to year of, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? Like, am I at the right college? Should I have tried to rehab and pursue like a smaller college experience and
Yeah.
play soccer there as like maybe a second string keeper? And it just was not the right option. I mean, it
Right.
was when I got to WVU and I was kind of thrust into my schoolwork. I mean, I was in the honors college, so I was taking like years, and it was just a lot. And I've always been a very go-getter personality. I've been very outgoing. I'm a complete extrovert. And so that huge college experience with 30,000 other people worked really well for me. And
Awesome.
I didn't really feel like I didn't really feel like there was much of a challenge to overcome in terms of return to play after injury because
Right.
I didn't have it.
Okay, I got
I
you.
mean, it would be different if I had been like, but it really just cold turkey life stage switched me.
Right.
And I think that that's what made it easier
Right.
because if I had still had to dwell on that injury and
Right.
not being able to play, I think it
Right.
would have been a way more difficult scenario to get through.
Right. Well,
But
that's a credit to you. Yeah,
in
that's where you're strong.
I really don't think that it was because I was able to move on because it happened
Yeah.
at a life stage where I was like already fleeing the nest.
Gotcha.
And so
Yeah.
I think that in essence, I was able to kind of reinvent myself outside of sport. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's what a lot of people who quit their sport or age out of their sport have to do. They just have to like sport as a life stage is over for them.
Right.
Some
So
handle it better than others.
well, that's what we're here for with the mastermind. We're going to put together a collection of people that's going to help them with that. So your advice is, to compartmentalize and learn to kind of move on, leave this here, and then just move to the next stage. Just kind of like a fight. I always reference fight. I'm a former fighter. And so it's one of those things that, if I go back and I'm pouting because I got my butt kicked the first round, I'm certainly not going to make it to the third round because he's going to knock me out in the second round for me pouting. But I have to focus on, okay, when that bell rings, I've got to be focused no matter what happened in the last round. I can't focus on that. So what you're saying is, the advice you'd give them is move on, answer the bell to the next round so you can stay in the fight. Well, that's good. All right. What's your daily mental fitness routine? What's your workout routine? Is it something, do you read, books? Do you watch motivational videos? Do you, sometimes it's just about hanging out with the right people and picking up and watching mentors and seeing things and knowing where you want to be, or that internal drive that keeps us, so what would be your mental fitness routine daily? Kind of like, physical, you get up and go for a jog, you do this. What do you do mentally each day, small or big? Just what is something you do consistently that cognitively you're taking control of your mental fitness?
Yeah, so I run about 2 miles a day,
That's good. Yeah.
and that just gets me back into the the flow state. I mean, what we were
Right.
talking about earlier is
Yep.
essentially the flow state.
Yep.
Account anything that is happening outside of the current box that you're in, mentally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really brings me back to the moment, the present moment. And I think that that is crucial to my mental health. And another thing that has really exacerbated that realization is COVID, because I haven't been able to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I've just been running. And I mean,
Uh,
it's just past the mile mark.
right.
I'm like, this is nice. This is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can ever get back there, I was telling my wife the other day is, she's a big jogger. And when we go running together before, when I was a real athlete, we would go jogging together and people would drive by and say, gosh, look at those two people just jogging, working out. That couple's fit. That's cool. Now, when we go out together and run, she's so far ahead of me that the cars see her jogging and they pull up to me and they ask me if I need a ride. It's like, why are you crying? I'm like, I'm working out. Back in the day. All right, so your mental fitness routine daily is to stay in the present moment. So you use a little bit of physical exertion to keep you in the moment, but you practice staying in the moment, which I love.
Yeah.
I love that. Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. Have you read that yet?
No, I haven't.
It's great. After the show, I'm going to give you free access to that book. It's an amazing book about keeping,
Cool.
it's not a religious book. It's just about a practice. It's a philosophy. It's really cool. It's about staying in the moment and gives you practical tools. Okay. So we got that. And so now we're closing in on it.
Yeah.
Who would
I
you
also,
like? Yeah, go ahead.
so like we were talking about the physical side, but I think that
Right.
we also have to talk about the mental side, because
Sure. That's
physical
it.
fitness is one thing,
Right.
and running is amazing.
Right.
But then, I mean, when you're cooped up in your room all the time, I mean, I work from home.
Right.
So that, as an extrovert, is kind of a difficult part of my
I
existence,
bet it would be.
because I don't have coworkers, I don't have bosses, I don't have somewhere that I go. I have to foster connections through things like this,
Right. Right.
Zooms and interviews. And
Right.
I mean, that is, if I went days and days and days and didn't have an interview, I don't know what I would do. I mean, it would be, that's the kind of stuff that keeps me mentally sane, because I have to talk to people on the
Right.
daily.
Right.
And I love to-do lists because they keep me organized. I also have a bullet journal, which is just perfect. I mean, I thrive on agendas. You will
Fantastic.
never see me without, even if the week has nothing in it. I mean, just being able to look at that week and say, okay, this is what I have to do every day, and then these are meetings I have to make, or meetings I'm currently making.
Right.
I mean, I have to have that kind of mental
Structure.
structure,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
that allows for that kind of stuff to be right in front of me. I'm looking at it right now. I mean, this week has been pretty busy, and I thrive on busy. I need my mental game that I have to have.
So structure, that's one of the ways that you can deal with it, is just staying structured, keeping busy, staying connected. And again, the whole reason why we started MentalFitness.CARE and the Mental Fitness Mastermind and what we're putting together with the Athlete Mental Health Certification Program is to bring community together. Community, because when we're a part of a team, we have community all the time, and we have structure, we have itineraries, we have practice schedules, we have game schedules, we have all of it. We know what we have to do. And so when athletes thrive in that, but then when we get separated from the herd and we get over and left to our own devices, not anybody holding us accountable, then sometimes all hell breaks loose and we go downhill fast. But okay, let's skip. Who would you like to draft? If you're setting it, me and you're setting in here, and there's the draft of the mental fitness team, we get to draft somebody out of your herd. Who that in your group would you like to draft to be on the mental fitness mastermind team? Think about this. This is somebody that you want to stand back to back with. Okay, so who should we draft? Who would you like to draft?
I mean, I
Former
have a lot of really talented colleagues and former classmates at WVU that have gone on to work with military individuals and sports teams. And I just think that there are so many of them that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head that like I feel like I should make a list, like the whole list of them and say Julia sent me. She loves
make a
you
list.
here.
Do it. All right, good. Because we're trying to
Yeah.
build an army. So all right. Now, last question. Here's the off ball. What is this that
Okay.
I hear that you were part of the Barstool Sports Rough and Rowdy, the Tough Man contest?
God.
What is this? And so not
All
only
right.
were you a part of it, what I see is this this young lady sitting here, and then she says, I'm reading what you did, and it says, I pushed the way through the crowd and cleared the crowd, cleared a path through the crowd to the ring. And I'm like, what in the hell did I just read here? So you got to tell me a little bit about that.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
hilarious. Okay, so real quick, the Rough and Rowdy. What year were you born?
97.
Okay, so I want you to YouTube, write this down. I want you to YouTube Danny White 1991 Tough Man Contest. Danny White 1991 Tough Man Contest. I was a part of a Rough and Rowdy type event in 1991, 6 years before you were born. But you got to YouTube that one. You'll get a big kick out of it. You'll laugh. Danny White 1999 or 1991 Tough Man Contest. And it's kind of like a Rough and Rowdy back in that day, 6 years before you were born. So, all right, I got to hear this. Tell me about, what are you doing pushing people through the crowd? Clearing the way. That's hilarious.
So a lot of my journalism experience is in videography.
Yeah, I love that.
So entities like ESPN and MLB Network
Yeah.
and the Pirates. So they'll call me up and they'll say, "Hey, can you work this event or this event?" And that's how I actually got to work the World Series when the
Fun.
Nationals won. I
Nice.
was in the camera well by the dugout,
Nice.
and that run was amazing. But
Awesome.
it's situations like that that just put me in life experiences. Like
Fantastic.
I started college. I never would have been able to predict when I started college and I was still getting over that injury that
Mm-hmm.
I would be in a couple years in the dugout of a World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me was just unbelievable. I mean, it
Beautiful.
was bucket list stuff.
I love it. I love it. I'm happy
And
for you.
it's stuff like that that just when you're freelancing strikes, it just like rings a light
Yeah,
bulb. You're like, "Oh my gosh, I
absolutely.
have to do,"
Yeah,
because it's so individual. It's so
absolutely.
like once in a lifetime. It's like that. So I got a call from one of my colleagues at WVU that I had worked all of my years with the athletic department with. And he was like, "Okay, we have this event. It is basically as redneck as can be.
uh,
Are you interested?"
I'm from Arkansas, so I know what
And
redneck is.
I was like, "Are you like, do you know me?" I've never watched boxing. I've never seen fights at all.
Yeah.
And this was as amateur as can be, you know?
Oh, yeah. It's
So
crazy.
it's like I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna do it.
Awesome.
I'm just gonna see
I
what's
love it.
happening."
I love the courage. I
And
love it.
I mean, because up to that point, I had been very stereotypical sports. I mean,
Yeah.
football, basketball, baseball,
Yeah.
gymnastics,
Yeah.
wrestling,
Yeah.
volleyball,
Yeah.
swimming,
Yeah.
rifling, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of this very, very racing was not one of those.
I tell you what, Barstool Sports looks like it would be
And
really
so
fun. Yeah.
just on the I've never done this and have never heard of this before,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I have to do this. I have to be in attendance in
That's so
some
cool.
capacity.
Good for you.
And so what they needed was someone to follow the camera operator around because he's a handheld. I've worked with him on a lot of sports before.
Okay.
And his name is Ray. And so
What is his name? I'm sorry,
I
you cut out.
was get like spit on him. His name's Ray.
Okay, Ray. Ray had a bodyguard, a good one. That's
Legitimately,
hilarious.
that was the role that I played, essentially.
That's hilarious. I love it. Yeah.
And so I was just basically in charge of wrapping the coil because he was a handheld camera. So he was traveling all the way around the ring.
Gotcha.
And so my job was essentially to make sure that no one tripped over the cords, and with everyone swarming around the ring to make sure that like no one got in. The camera angle stayed clean. Ray didn't trip over anything or get tripped. And it was just like, it was one of those scenarios where as I'm sitting there and standing there, I was just looking around like, is this real life? Like,
well, the one thing about the rough and rowdy crowd is that it's probably one of the most calm sports crowds in the world. I mean, they're very calm. They're very laid back, right? Is that not right? Kind of like a golf crowd is pretty laid back.
Because
I got addicted watching Rough and Rowdies.
It was different because like COVID.
Oh, crazy. Yeah.
It was different because I had watched the videos going in. So like I had accepted the job without really knowing what I was going to be doing. I was like, hilarious. I have to be here.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Good for you. For an extrovert.
Then I went through and watched videos. Then I went through and watched videos from years past. And I saw just the absolute chaotic energy that event it exudes. And
brilliant marketing.
Have to be full capacity because of COVID. They didn't have. It was basically just friends and family that were in attendance. It wasn't like, let's pack this place.
You got to do it again.
And so because of that, it wasn't exactly. I have to see the full rough and rowdy experience. Yeah. But because of COVID, it wasn't as intense as years past and the videos that I had watched. So I went in and it was relatively calm for the event, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I had never worked anything for Barstool before. So this was just kind of a been through before.
Wonderful. That's it.
Just like so ridiculous.
I appreciate you coming and spending some time with me today. I appreciate you being part of the mastermind. I encourage you again to draft some of your friends, your colleagues, the people that you think, whether they're in the industry, whether they're other athletes, because the whole goal here, we're going to have some fun, but we're going to bring each collective consciousness together. And then we're going to help athletes defeat mental health challenges in the game of life, all of us together. And I'm definitely going to hook up. I think we need to get together professionally too, because I think you can add a lot of value to what we're doing, especially with your niche and your talents set. We're going to be looking for people like you and professionals like you to kind of help us spread this message and build content. So I look forward to getting to know you more, Julia. Okay. And so, yeah. 1991 Danny White Tough Man Contest. Look that up. Laugh about that. 6 years before you were born. All right. Well, I'm going to be in touch. Thanks. Hey, listen now, real quick, everyone. Closer mentality. Check out this podcast and tell me if that's not one of the most unique, creative podcasts on the market right now, especially in athlete mental health. All right. Have a great day, Julia. I'll see you soon.
And give it 5 stars. Give it 5 stars on Apple Podcast.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to give you 5 stars. Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye. Great girl.